On episode 18 of the American Reveille Podcast, James Lane reflects upon what's actually happening versus what we're being sold by the media, the split in the group the orchestrators don't want you to see. We talk about Antifa Island and Capitol Hill, the ridiculous amount of shootings, and knock knock, who's there? Crap. Coronavirus is back, but first, a poem. O most exalted of the Mosai, Calliope, I call directly to you. Though you've slept in dust and faded into shadows, I have not forgotten you. Though history has buried you away, I carry a shovel. Though many turn inward and seek clarity from nothingness, I am not ignorant. You've not been forgotten, O great queen of the Mosai. While many have sat comfortably in their homes in New Ithaca, I have sailed the black seas and dared Poseidon to his face, never once winning, but always learning. I have failed my flock and released the cursed bag of winds many times, and ho, how I've found myself shipwrecked and stranded with Calypso more times than I can count, in prisons of my own making, of course. Though I'm humbled and grateful for such lessons, time is now running out, for I'm a mere mortal, flesh and bone, finite, fallible, and flawed. In this recognition, in this my servant's breath begs of you your services. By the grace of God I've survived the Bassarides, and I've been granted a vision that requires the golden sword of your son Orpheus. Though he was ripped apart, I must not be. No, I must fulfill my duty here in the mortal world. Beautiful Calliope, I cannot do this alone. Again, I am but flesh and bone. Your son, through you a conduit to the heavens, could move the mightiest stone, uproot the tallest tree, and calm the wildest beast with his voice and song. O most exalted among the muses, I beg of you to whisper in my ear and channel God's voice into my being. I beg of you to release me from my bonds by allowing epics to flow from my fingertips, not as the father of such epics, but as their observer. Hark, Calliope, stir from your eternal slumber, and once again serve God and channel his wisdom into me. Help yet another lost sheep find his way home. May this pen become Orpheus's golden sword, and this paper my vessel to eternity. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, happy Monday, and happy birthday, Grandma. This is the American Reveille Podcast, and I'm your host, James Lane, and folks, I am friggin' exhausted. I just finished a 30-page final paper for one of my classes, and I wrote it like over 16 hours with barely any breaks, and then I wrote this, so I feel like if I don't get all this stuff done, the inner Jocko Willink that lives inside of me, and don't be weird, it's not just me, he's inside all of us. My inner Jocko would be highly disappointed in me if I shirked my responsibility off and didn't get a podcast episode out on time for you guys, bright and early for Monday morning. So here I am, ladies and gentlemen, all yours for the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. Aren't we all so lucky? Anyway, you may be asking yourself, what in the hell was I reading when this podcast started? Well, I'll tell you what I was reading. I call it The Writer's Call to Calliope, and I wrote it because of the Pressfield book, The War of Art. In that book, he reads a prayer to the muse Calliope that he uses to, psych himself up to write and get his stuff done. And I felt it only befitting that I would basically write a new version of it for myself. So, as you can tell, it's long-winded like me. Anyway, I figured I would need her for this episode with everything that's going on. Okay, guys, so let's take a look at what's going on. As it seems to me, what started out as an important and overdue cause for racial equality has been taken over by anarchist groups and domestic terrorists. And We really need to call it what it is, and I'm reaching out to all of my Black, Latino, white, Asian, LGBT, Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all Americans. I'm not excluding anyone in this. We can all agree that racial equality within the system is long overdue for an overhaul, and we can all agree that people have the right to peacefully protest. We can all agree that people have the right to express their outrage and vocalize their pain through movements towards change. This isn't new in our great country. In fact, it's welcomed. And if you sighed when I said great, then you're probably an anarchist yourself and you stand for nothing. But can we agree that when people get murdered in the streets and buildings are being lit on fire, when white kids from privileged families are chanting in occupied pieces of territory with absolutely no idea of the consequences to their actions or even what they're thinking they stand for, when white kids from affluent families are attacking police and chanting and speaking for the Black community, don't you think that's a form of racism in itself? I mean, if you can't see that anarchist militant groups have fed our kids a bunch of brainwashing and set them loose in our city streets, then you're a sad excuse for a parent, and I'm sorry for your children. This whole thing needs to become about balance really damn quick. Don't you understand that both Republican views and Democratic views are necessary to keep society balanced and ethical? It's all about balance, and right now, everyone's making judgments and decisions based upon their damn emotions and not logic or ethics, not even morals, just BS. Speaking of BS, speaking of one of the stupidest decisions of all times, I'm going to read to you how the Washington Post notified the world that someone was shot and killed inside CHOP, formerly CHAZ, the militant capital of Antifa Island, as I'm calling it now. This is from the Washington Post, a supposedly non-biased news source. Seattle, Derek Jones rolled out of his tent Friday morning at the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, or CHOP, to find a yoga class for people of color underway in the park. He joined for some stretching before heading to a 1,000-strong Juneteenth march and rally in the historically Black Central District. Jones, who is Black and lives on predominantly white Whidbey Island, 45 miles north of Seattle, has been in the city since June 5th protesting police violence. This was the biggest Juneteenth I had ever seen, he said. As those celebrations continued after dark and mixed with general Friday night revelry and end of school year celebrations, a volatile mixture of fireworks, alcohol, and firearms triggered violence. All right. First of all, this is crazy, guys. The Washington Post is first trying to use your emotions against you by instilling some sort of guilt in you. They're making this about race and a super lovely and supposedly quaint celebration. First of all, let me set something straight. Juneteenth is significant in American history. In fact, it's arguably just as important as the Declaration of Independence. And yes, we should make it a national holiday, no question about it. But this story is about a different situation in downtown Seattle that's out of control and now resulting in loss of life. Murder. M-U-R-D-E-R. For anyone who's forgotten how to spell. So what happened after the shooting? Let's find out. The Seattle Police Department said in a statement that officers initially had trouble getting to the scene of the shooting because they, quote, were met by a violent crowd that prevented officers safe access to the victims. The police officers' entry into the zone, filmed by people occupying it, didn't appear to show violence. I guess that's one perspective. Police said they are searching for the shooter or shooters and had no description or motive to share as of Saturday morning. Investigators gathered shell casings from the scene Saturday as well. Well, there you go, folks. That's what defund the police gets you. More unsolved murders like we didn't have enough already. It gets even better. Let's read some more of this gold. After 2 a.m., the festivities turned violent. One witness described an argument that escalated into a fight that resulted in 10 Gunshots. This is downtown Seattle. The suspects fled while volunteer medics who were stationed on the same corner rushed to treat the victim. Upward of, get this, 20 sentinels who provide volunteer security to the police-free protest zone also responded to the scene. Are you kidding me? Sentinels? What is this, X-Men? May I ask where these sentinels are trained? Where they gained employment as volunteer sentinels? Is the Department of Justice looking at this? This is the craziest and dumbest thing I've ever heard. This is the worst movie script I've ever seen. The local government's allowing this thing to grow in power too. What's happening in Capitol Hill and attempting to happen in Portland and other cities, every person, regardless of color, needs to recognize this. What's happening has nothing to do with improving Black lives in any way whatsoever. Are you scared of being called a racist, that you won't stand up for what's right morally and ethically for all families, especially Black lives? The people building division and dissent among us, the people creating more of this divide, the Antifa members, and the people steering certain Black Lives Matters sects away from actually helping Black people, those are the true racists. Those people need to be identified and held accountable for turning a beautiful movement into mass hysteria and terror. What else? What else did they have to say? Quote, arguments happen in the crowd all the time, even during celebrations, but gunshots change everything, said a sentinel on the site as the Time who gave... Wait, what is it? His name is Cat, apparently. Okay, anyway. He's openly carrying 2 knives, and it goes from some people are arguing and some people are celebrating and everybody is running. That's great. Well, duh. What did you think was going to happen? I keep seeing these videos circulating on YouTube, and I don't understand why mainstream media keeps avoiding them. Still, I keep seeing these videos of people getting into gunfights in city streets. I'm talking today, last night, yesterday, the night before, probably tonight. These young adults with firearms are shooting at each other like it's the wild, wild west. And they're just standing there. And people are wondering why people are also getting shot. This isn't a video game. You don't get another life. You don't get a chance to take cover, to hit the ground. You don't get that chance twice. If you don't, sometimes you don't go home. When you die, you die. This is the real world, dumbasses. There are real consequences for your actions. When this is over, we're all going to have to pay the price. All of us and all of our children. The next part of this is classic. Volunteers transported both victims to the nearby University of Washington affiliated trauma center. The hospital confirmed that the 2 men arrived about 25 minutes apart in private vehicles. All right, let me ask you something. Do you know why volunteers had to transport both victims to the hospital 25 minutes apart? Let me let you in on a little secret. Because the mob wouldn't allow medical services or police to come in and treat the wounded. That's why the person is dead most likely, and every single person that was there blocking them should be held accountable and responsible for murder, as they impeded crucial life-saving personnel from doing their job. Folks, you have to open your eyes. You have to see that everything that's going on, everything that's currently happening to our country is engineered to keep you paralyzed. Yet it's up to you to take your country back. You have to see that eventually, or this will all be over and things will be substantially different. And look, that's okay as long as the difference is a balancing of our nation and our ideals, not a tearing apart of such. We have to remember that these historical times are all said and done. When they come to a close, everyone out there will have to reacclimate to society and move forward with their lives. And we have to remember that we're all still brothers and sisters. The issue is in allowing this to go on for so long. I'm not saying that we need to physically stop people, but why is no one speaking out on the subject? Why is everyone so silent, so defeated? Stop confusing the two issues. Stop allowing manipulating forces to keep you suspended in fear. Stop feeling guilty if you know inside you're a moral and just individual without a racist bone in your body. There are two issues here. These two issues are separated, okay? We need to separate them. We witnessed a terrible case of police brutality in the blatant and gruesome murder of George Floyd. Regardless of what he did in his past, we can all agree, and we all have agreed, that no one deserves to die like that, period. This sparked an outcry against blatant police brutality and investigations into racism within our police departments. Furthermore, this led to the early stages of re-examinations, including the current systems within our country. We started to at least re-examine these systems and look into ways we could make equality a reality, and we're doing that right now. This is a good thing. And what I mean by that is that there's still some long overdue changes necessary to ensure racial equality, and I'm happy they're being examined and hopefully rectified. That's the original issue, and I support that issue, that cause, that belief 100%. And I know pretty much everybody does too. Everybody in this country. Here's the second issue. The trickster that's disguising itself within the first issue. Some people from other movements, such as Antifa and extremist factions within the group disguising themselves as Black Lives Matter, have determined that the only way to fix America is to tear it down completely, system by system, piece by piece, statue by statue, book by book, institution by institution, with no chance to review or revise anything. Just toss it all in the fire. The hope here is that you'll remain paralyzed in fear of being called a racist while they burn the world down around you. This is what a socialist takeover looks like. If you've read history, this is what you need to speak out against, folks. This is what we as Americans, from all corners, all creeds, all lifestyles, regardless of whether you're black, white, LGBT, Latin American, Asian American, socialism is what we need to unite against, or our children will never have a chance at real freedom, a chance at the real American dream. You want to know where socialism leads? Go pick up a copy of the Gulag Archipelago. You'll find out where socialism leads real fast. This is James Lane, and the American Reveille Podcast will be right back.
The American Reveille Podcast with James Lane would like to take a moment to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to tune into the show. It's because of great fans like you that we strive to deliver the best quality content one can create as fast as one can fling the pen. With that being said, a good little boy never misses his opportunity to sell himself, and though James would never ask you for your money, he would like to let you know that if you absolutely love this podcast, the writing, the art, its production, anything, please do us the personal favor of liking, sharing, tweeting, texting, and talking about this podcast. James Lane is a father, a husband, a U.S. Navy veteran, and is personally committed to the success of the American Reveille Podcast. Please email James Lane directly at podcast@AmericanReveille.com, or please visit our website at www.AmericanReveille.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and bougie, and we're talking about what's become a very sensitive and touchy topic, the topic of speaking up against anything that's happening right now because of fear. the fact that officials are also using this chaos as a time to virtue signal and claim political power from both sides of the aisle is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So I have a theory, and if you were born before social media like I was, then this maybe will make pretty good sense to you. So for years and years now, social media sites and tech companies have been training us to react to headlines. You know exactly what I'm talking about, that clickbait culture. Now, remember, most of these young people have had high-speed internet, and all of this social media stimulation, this clickbait culture, more like a clickbait cult, this repetition of decades and decades of being sucked into BS headlines has made them possibly immune to the meat in the actual sandwich, the content inside what they think they're representing. So now they think they're standing up for a cause, and I'll give it to some of them. They're the peaceful protesters out there that are fighting for change, fighting for legislative changes that'll reform and introduce measures to ensure equalities for black folks out there. I stand with that all day. But the militant groups out there that are spreading chaos and anarchy, spreading doom and gloom, desolation and destruction, they've been conditioned by social media and liberal arts departments for decades now. So please, don't be silent. We all have the right to express our views and opinions without fear of persecution. Where are our leaders, by the way? Where are our representatives defending the ordinary people of America from socialist, Stalinistic, Orwellian bullshit? The kind of bullshit that's not supposed to happen in this country. And by the way, AOC, I love K-pop, and you're the biggest racist out there. A power-hungry leech willing to crush anyone in her way. A selfish disgrace. I worked in the bar business too, AOC, and you're a dime a dozen. I live out here in these streets. I have to protect my children. Read our history, AOC. Nothing good ever happens to socialist regimes in the long run. They're always doomed to fail sooner or later, and so are you. So guys, let's try to find some more news. All right, look, here's one that no one is talking about after what happened to Chief David Dorn was ignored. It proves that there are multiple agendas at work here, folks. This story's from USA Today. It's out of Tallahassee, Florida, and I think you guys might know where I'm going already. So Aaron Glee Jr. has confessed several times that he kidnapped and killed Olutoyin Salu, a student and protester, and Victoria Sims, a volunteer and retired state worker, in grisly crimes that have horrified the community. According to newly released court documents, Glee waived his right to remain silent and gave his account of events to officers with the Tallahassee Police Department and the Orlando Police Department. They include shocking new details, including that Glee kept Salu a prisoner in his rundown home for several days, raping her and eventually deciding to kill her to avoid getting caught. This is horrible. The documents also reveal that Salu, 19, and Sims, 75, apparently had met each other in the last few days of their lives after Glee arranged for Sims to pick him and Salu up at a bus stop. Salu vanished June 6th, followed by Sims on June 11th. On June 13th, Tallahassee Police Department officers descended on his home after tracing Sims' cell phone to the address. They found Sims' body under a bloody sheet in the bedroom and Salu's body under a pile of leaves in the woods behind the house. What a piece of crap. By that time, Glee had already bought a one-way ticket to West Palm Beach, where his family members, Orlando police, working off information from Tallahassee police, intercepted him at a Greyhound bus station and arrested him. He complained of breathing problems and was taken to an Orlando hospital, where he openly chatted about the two murders, according to the arrest report. Wow. So, this is a heinous and disgusting crime. And I just don't understand how defunding the police would have brought justice to these poor women's families. It doesn't matter the race of the killer. It matters that people are now dying in the streets across this country while we sit at home and pretend it can't be spread to different areas of the cities and states. People are dying, and a major political party is cheering it in the United States of America in the year 2020. Is anyone going to step up and offer any real leadership here? Do you really think anything other than balance is the answer here? Look, people are acting with the mob mentality. People are acting crazy in the streets. Do you just expect that you'll just go back home and things will be cool after this all winds down, after socialist plans inevitably fail? And folks, I've looked into this Dr. Strange style, and socialism does inevitably fail. Meanwhile, everyone else with the freshly dismantled police department in Minneapolis have to deal with rising crime. Listen to this. Witnesses describe chaotic scenes after 12 people are shot in uptown Minneapolis. This is from their local Fox News affiliate, Fox 9. Police are investigating after 12 people were shot early Sunday morning in uptown Minneapolis. That's 12 people, folks. 12 people on Sunday morning. That's Father's Day, guys. Jesus. According to police, at about 12:37 a.m., multiple 911 calls came in reporting multiple gunshots on the 2900 block of Hennepin Avenue South. When officers arrived, they located several people suffering from gunshot wounds. Several were transported to the hospital, while others had been taken to the hospital, again, here we go, via private vehicles. Police believe the suspects started shooting in the mid-2900 blocks of Hennepin Avenue South and proceeded north. People scattered, and the suspects fled. Bad guys are getting brazen now, folks. They know it's getting easier for them to commit crimes and terrorize neighborhoods, and they're doing it under the guise of protest, when in fact they're not even part of the protest. Some of these people are just ruining it for the actual protesters. Again, some of these folks are anarchists. The manager who was working the front door of a restaurant says people were waiting in line to get in when the shooting happened. He said he strongly believed there were multiple shooters involved, as they found 3 different kinds of shell casings in and around their business. They had to have started over here on the sidewalk and made their way out to the middle of the street here, shooting back and forth, said Fred Huang, a witness. That's why there's broken glass here and over here, and also right next to our building, there's some broken windows. Officers learned that 12 people, all adults, were wounded in the shooting. 11 people suffered non-life-threatening injuries, and 1 man died. No one's in custody at this time. The case is still under investigation. Let me say that again. No one's in custody at this time. The case is still under investigation. All right, folks. So no suspects and people are being murdered. Again, when did this become okay? When did this become part of the civil rights movement? I believe if you ask the real protesters, they will say they want no part of violence. They want real change through peaceful means. We can't afford to divide ourselves right now, folks. We have to find common ground and come together as Americans. You look at your children and you tell me you want this violence for them. It doesn't matter what race or orientation you are. If you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm saying. Look at your kids and tell me you want this violence when you know that changes can be made. The reforms can be discussed and done correctly just as quickly through peaceful means. Know who you're actually supporting. We all know that these people are out there shooting folks. Some people don't give a damn about black lives or any lives. They just care about their own damn lives. So guys, let's try to switch to something a little more cheerier for 2020. Let's look at some coronavirus news. All right, guys, this is from the Associated Press. Second wave of coronavirus cases, experts say we're still in the first. Great. Here we go. what's all this talk about a second wave of U.S. coronavirus cases? In the Wall Street Journal last week, Vice President Mike Pence wrote in a piece headlined, "There isn't a coronavirus second wave, that the nation is winning the fight against the virus." Many public health experts, however, suggest it's no time to celebrate. About 120,000 Americans have died from the new virus, and daily counts of new cases in the U.S. are the highest they've been in more than a month, driven by alarming recent increases in the South and West. But there is at least one point of agreement. Second wave is probably the wrong term to describe what is happening. So when you have 20,000 plus infections per day, how can you talk about a second wave, said Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health. We're in the first wave. Let's get out of the first wave before you have a second wave. Clearly, there was an initial infection peak in April as cases exploded in New York City after schools and businesses were closed across the country. The rate of new cases dropped somewhat, but it's more of a plateau or a mesa, not the trough after a wave, said Caitlin Rivers, a disease researcher at Johns Hopkins University's Center for Health Security. Scientists generally agree the nation is still in its first wave of coronavirus infections, albeit one that's dipping in some parts of the country while rising in others. This virus is spreading around the United States and hitting different places with different intensity at different times, said Dr. Richard Besser, chief executive of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, who was acting director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention when a pandemic flu hit the U.S. in 2009. Dr. Arnold Monto, a University of Michigan flu expert, echoed that sentiment. What I would call this is continued transmission with flare-ups, he said. Flu seasons sometimes feature a second wave of infections, but in those cases, the second wave is a distinct new surge in cases from a strain of flu that is different from the strain that caused earlier illnesses. That is not the case in the coronavirus epidemic. Monto doesn't think second wave really describes what's happening now, calling it total semantics. Second waves are basically in the eye of the beholder, he said, but Besser said semantics do matter because saying a first wave is past may give people a false sense that the worst may be over. Some worry a large wave of coronavirus might occur this fall or winter after schools reopen. The weather turns colder and less humid and people huddle inside more. That would follow seasonal patterns seen with flu and other respiratory viruses, and such a fall wave could be very bad given there's no vaccine or experts think most Americans haven't had the virus yet. But the new coronavirus so far has been spreading more episodically and sporadically than flu, and it may not follow the same playbook. It's very difficult to make a prediction, Rivers said. We don't know the degree to which this virus is seasonal, if it's seasonal at all. So guys, again, that was from the Associated Press, and I've got to say that I'm running out of things to worry about in 2020. I saw something about Trump and Roswell the other day. Roswell Aliens. I'm serious. I'm almost out of mental hard drive space. I listened to Brett Weinstein on Rogan the other night, and he made a lot of terrifying sense speaking about how the virus could have been possibly altered in a lab. But because of this, we have no idea how it's going to evolve, nor the long-term damage it may cause to survivors. And I think as Americans, it really isn't in the American spirit for us to just lay down and take it. But at the same time, I think it's smart to still remain precautious when we're out and about, like wearing a mask and using hand sanitizer. But if they think we're just going to stay in and hide while forces try to burn down the world around us, they've really got another thing coming. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's easy to just sit around and cross your fingers and hope that everything's going to turn out okay. If we all do that, though, nothing's going to turn out okay. Guys, we owe our children a United States of America free of injustices and equal for all people. We owe our children a United States of America where all parties, all races, all orientations and creeds have a seat at the table. And we deserve leadership willing to fight for the rights of all Americans, regardless of financial status and free from any and all discrimination. We owe our children an education that teaches both the great progressive victories of our civilization and the absolute atrocities which have been committed alongside, as to ensure we honor the dead by learning from our past mistakes as a nation and as a people. And most of all, we owe our children a United States of America which affords the opportunity to acquire and achieve one's own definition of a success and greatness, as long as an individual is willing to put in the hard work. We owe this to all Americans, period. Okay, guys, look. I know this episode deviated from my usual format, but with so much going on, I just felt that it was important to scientifically, if you want to call it that, decipher a few things for everyone. Now that everyone understands what's happening and can finally think clear, hopefully, please take the time to do the actual research and not just read headlines. Please take the time to understand the context of what people are saying before you hurt and destroy them and their families. Remember, we're all brothers and sisters in this life. We should be focusing upon selfless ways to uplift each other, but instead we're being forced to worry about the safety of our friends, families, and loved ones while there are evil forces at play once again, toying with us, infringing upon your freedoms and God-given rights to raise your family and make something of yourself. All Americans have the right to free speech. All Americans have the right to feel safe in their homes. And while they're conducting their own business, regardless of race, creed, gender, orientation, anything, this narrative we're being fed is garbage. And let me ask you, how does it feel? How does it taste to eat garbage? That's apparently what we're worth to the puppeteers. We need to pull our heads out of our asses and work together as Americans to fix this, not tear the whole place apart like children. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for taking the time out to listen to the 18th episode of the American Reveille Podcast, and please take the time out as well to share this episode with your friends and family, and please leave a review. Reach out to me on social media or email me at jameslane@americanreveille.com if you have any questions or suggestions or feedback. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys really think about what's actually happening and whether you're courageous, whether you're going to be manipulated by a mob, whether you're going to cower in fear when the real cause is revealed to the world, or whether you're going to stand up for your American brothers and sisters, regardless of race, regardless of color, regardless of creed, so that we can make sure equality is achieved for the long run, the right way, and permanently. This is James Lane, and I'm clocking out. See you next week, guys.